Caitlin Clark was supposed to be coached by Minnesota Lynx head coach Cheryl Reeve.
Because Clark traded Cheryl Reeve, who was the coach of her team, or was to be the coach of her team.
Caitlin Clark and Napheesa Collier, they traded their coaches. They didn't trade any players in the draft. They traded their coaches.
But I cannot believe she traded the coach.
Caitlin Clark has just made one of the most surprising moves in the 2025 WNBA All-Star Draft, leaving the entire league stunned. During a live national broadcast, Clark didn't just select players. She went a step further and traded her own coach, Cheryl Reeve. It was a bold and unexpected power move, and Reeve was completely caught off guard.
The WNBA All-Star Draft was fun between Caitlin Clark and Napheesa Collier, the team captains, picking the players, picking the rosters.
Caitlin Clark and Napheesa Collier took on the roles of captains for the WNBA All-Star Game Draft, and the event quickly became intense. What was meant to be a fun, television-friendly segment soon turned into one of the most memorable and unexpected moments in league history. Clark completely changed the tone of the draft. As for Cheryl Reeve, she was clearly unprepared for what happened next. What began as a lighthearted selection process suddenly felt strategic and calculated. In a shocking twist, Clark made the boldest decision of the night. She traded her own coach, not a player or a draft pick, but the coach herself.
Caitlin Clark was supposed to be coached by Minnesota Lynx head coach Cheryl Reeve.
Caitlin Clark was initially paired with Cheryl Reeve, the highly respected head coach of the Minnesota Lynx and a former Team USA coach, the same national team that notably left Clark off its roster. During the live broadcast, Clark openly challenged the situation, saying she wasn't even sure if it was allowed but wanted to trade the coach anyway. This wasn't just a surprising decision. It sent a clear and powerful message.
Of course, Reeve is Collier's head coach for the Minnesota Lynx, so that makes sense.
Sandy Brondello, the head coach of the New York Liberty, was selected to take over coaching duties for Team Clark after the unexpected swap. The trade was immediately accepted by Napheesa Collier, who plays under Cheryl Reeve on the Minnesota Lynx and appeared comfortable with the change. However, this move wasn't really about convenience or game strategy. It was rooted in deeper context and history within the league.
But the drama is going to come from Reeve having previously been critical on social media about the amount of attention Clark received relative to the rest of the league.
Cheryl Reeve has been viewed by some fans as having a complicated history with Caitlin Clark. Critics have pointed to moments where Reeve appeared to downplay Clark's impact on the league and suggested that her popularity was being exaggerated by media attention. There were also incidents involving social media posts that were later deleted, which added to the controversy. Later, journalist Christine Brennan referenced these tensions in her reporting and book, suggesting that Reeve may have had some influence, direct or indirect, around Clark's omission from the Olympic roster connected to USA basketball. Reeve has denied any involvement in those decisions, but the topic remains widely debated among fans and observers.
Because Clark traded Cheryl Reeve, who was the coach of her team, or was to be the coach of her team, to Collier for Sandy Brondello, the coach of the New York Liberty.
In front of the cameras and the league, Caitlin Clark appeared to take control of the moment in a decisive way. The narrative around the situation suggested she wasn't willing to simply go along with expectations or remain passive in a system she didn't feel supported her from the start. She made a firm decision without confrontation or visible emotion, handling it calmly while still making a clear statement through her actions. What stood out most to observers was how composed she remained throughout it. From this perspective, the move was seen not as impulsive, but as intentional and strategic, signaling a shift in how she was choosing to navigate her role and voice within the league.
Here, I don't know that I've heard of a coach being traded in the All-Star game. This is something you're agreeing to, Fee. There's no terms to this deal.
The attention wasn't only on the fact that Caitlin Clark made a coaching change, but also on who replaced Cheryl Reeve. Sandy Brondello, head coach of the New York Liberty, is widely viewed as someone who understands Clark's style of play and could be a strong fit for her long-term development. This sparked discussion among fans about whether there could eventually be a connection between Clark and New York, especially alongside star guard Sabrina Ionescu. With Brondello now coaching both Clark and Ionescu in the All-Star setting, some observers saw it as an interesting overlap, while others considered it simply part of the event format. Meanwhile, Reeve, long regarded as one of the league's top coaches, was left on the other side of the situation, as Clark remained composed and visibly unfazed throughout the moment.
Caitlin Clark taking her teammates we knew, Aaliyah Boston, Kelsey Mitchell. She's also taken Sabrina Ionescu and the pink-haired player known as A'ja Wilson. That's right.
Let's put it simply. Caitlin Clark didn't just assemble a team for the WNBA All-Star Draft. She sent a message through her choices, and it was widely interpreted as bold and intentional. When the rosters were revealed, the focus wasn't only on who was selected, but also on who was left out. Clark appeared to prioritize familiarity and trust when building her team. From this perspective, some observers suggested that players who had been openly critical or dismissive of her over the past year and a half were notably absent from her roster selection.
She made sure she picked no ops, as people like to call them. She made sure there were no ops on her team.
And Caitlin Clark also wound up with all of the Fever members on her squad as well, meaning Aaliyah Boston, Clark, and Kelsey Mitchell will be a trio in Indianapolis.
Caitlin Clark's draft approach was quickly summarized by a viral meme, Team Caitlin, no ops allowed. It spread across social media almost immediately after the selections were announced. The idea behind it was that Clark appeared to build her roster around players she already knows and trusts, teammates, allies, and familiar connections from past competition. Sonia Citron was highlighted as a former Team USA connection, while Gabby Williams is widely regarded as someone with no public friction with Clark. Kiki Iriafin was seen as a young, athletic, low-drama addition who fit the team's energy profile. Meanwhile, Clark also selected multiple players from the Indiana Fever, including Aaliyah Boston and Kelsey Mitchell, who were widely expected to be part of her core group from the start. Even her less obvious picks were interpreted by fans as fitting a clear pattern of familiarity and chemistry.
She picked none of her rivals, other than A'ja Wilson, because, as Ken Swift's graphic says, Team Caitlin, no ops allowed, except A'ja.
Sada Sabali was also noted in discussions as a strong supporter of the new WNBA wave and someone who has publicly shown appreciation for Caitlin Clark and the growing attention around the league. Then came A'ja Wilson. Most observers expected her inclusion. Wilson is widely regarded as a generational talent, a two-time MVP, and one of the most dominant players in the game today. From a competitive standpoint, Clark's selection of Wilson was seen as straightforward. Her elite status made her an undeniable choice regardless of narratives or media attention. In that sense, Wilson was viewed as an exception to any perceived no-conflict pattern in the roster building. She wasn't left out because at that level of talent, she's considered a near-universal pick in any all-star scenario.
Here she picks her teammate Courtney Williams. She picks her UConn alum Brianna Stewart, Paige Beckers.
While Caitlin Clark was being portrayed as carefully building a strong dream roster, Nafisa Collier also created a viral moment during the live broadcast of the draft. When Angel Reese was mentioned, Collier leaned into the microphone and made a short remark that quickly drew attention online, especially because of the controversy that has surrounded that phrase in WNBA social media discussions. At that moment, Clark was shown sitting nearby, reacting very little, remaining composed, without visible laughter or expression change, as the exchange unfolded on live television.
As Angel Reese has filed a trademark for the rebound term me-bound.
Caitlin Clark built her WNBA All-Star roster in a way that fans saw as both strategic and symbolic, pairing elite scorers, playmakers, defenders, and bigs into what some called a potential super team. Her lineup included stars like Sabrina Ionescu, A'ja Wilson, Aaliyah Boston, and others, creating a balanced mix of shooting, size, and athleticism. She notably passed on some expected selections, which sparked debate among fans about strategy versus narrative choices. Meanwhile, rival Team Collier, led by Nafisa Collier, leaned heavily into frontcourt talent and physicality, but was viewed by some as less suited for fast-paced all-star play. The draft also sparked social media discussion about league storylines, coaching dynamics, and broader WNBA rivalries. While coaches like Cheryl Reeve and Sandy Brondello were part of the broadcast spotlight, fans focused most on Clark's influence over the event.